Welcome to lesson 5 of the Python programming course. We will be covering conditional statements and loops as dictionaries. So this is quite an important lesson because conditional statements and loops are fundamental to programming in general. And we'll be covering the basics here to hopefully show you how useful and powerful these concepts are. All right, so let's look at our Excel dataset again. And now let's check out one of the outputs we had in the first lesson, where we wanted to see people by the ethnicity who are male and from South Africa. This is quite straightforward to do in Excel using a filter tab. So let's now do it in Python. So to do that, we first need to know how to loop through a list. What does that actually mean? Well, why do we need loops in the first place? Well, it helps us to process data quicker. If we look at maybe the index column, let's first create a list, right? So hopefully this will explain to you why I would need loops. So we can create this list quite easily just by inputting this data with square brackets, and we get the index list, right? We can also use append. Maybe if we start with the empty list like this, and then append value 0, 1, 2, we can append those values as well. But that is a bit of a long process to type all of that out for a known sequence of numbers. So imagine we had 1,000 values, right? And do you think you're going to type them out? I don't think so. So this is where loops make our life a lot easier. We can do the same thing just with a few lines of code. All right, so let's have a look. So to do this, we have something called a for loop, right? There's two types of loops, a for loop and a while loop that we'll be discussing. The first one is a for loop. So to do this, we start off with the word for, and then space letter I. And the I is just an iterator or a variable that we use to iterate through a sequence of numbers or list or anything. Then we have the word in, keyword, and then another function called range. A range just allows you to, is a built-in function which allows you to enumerate numbers to a certain point. So here we're going to enumerate until number 11. And then very importantly, we have a colon, and then we jump to the next line. And very importantly is you see there's like a whole bunch of spaces. There's about 4 spaces. If you look at the first line and the second line, you see the spaces, all right? And then we have an array called index, and we're going to append all these values and print them out, right? So let's actually just copy this code and try this out in Spider to see what's happening. All right, so if you copy and paste it, you'll see that there's a bit of an issue because it doesn't indent correctly. By indenting, I mean there's not enough spaces. So using using a program like this, if you go to this line and you say enter, it will automatically jump 4 spaces. All right, so actually I'm going to type this out again. So index.append I. And then this little cross here shows we have an error. And does not match the outer indentation level, right? So don't have to worry too much what that means yet. But the problem was, the indent was a problem. Right, now it tells another error, undefined name index. So it actually doesn't know what index is yet. So let's just define an empty list like that. And then there we go. Okay, so let's save it and run the code. And what do we get? We get a nice list of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 10. All right, so very importantly, anytime you have a for loop and you need to have the I variable, which is an iterator, the keyword in, or a function called range, which just allows you to enumerate numbers. I can make this 100. If I run this, you're going to get a list of 100 numbers. I can make this anything. A range just allows you to enumerate until certain values or until the end of a certain point. So you can also use a for loop in various ways, but the important thing here is this colon. If you say colon, then Python understands you're going to work in a separate block of code, and it identifies a separate block of code with these spaces, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's this on average. That's typically what will happen. These 4 spaces signals to the Spider program that this index is specific to the for loop. It will only happen inside this for loop. All right. And then at the end, we're just printing the value of the list. Let's just change it back to 11. Run it, and then we get dead out. All right. So how does it happen? So you need to begin with the word for, a space with an incrementing variable called I. Then we have a built-in range function that controls how many times a loop will run. In this case, it'll be 10 and stop at 11. Thereafter, you need a colon, then press enter to go to the next line. If you're using a text editor like recognize Python, like Spider, for example, you see the next line indented by 4 spaces, which is what we saw. If not, you must manually add the spaces. It's very important as this allows Python to know you're running local code, local block of code only specific to the loop only. All right, so the loop increments from 0 to 1, 0 to 10, and through each iteration, it stores a new value, I, into the index list. All right, so let's just play around with this and see how far we can get with loops. All right, so the cool thing with Python, just like we did in the previous Linus course, we can print out a pyramid of stars. All right, and to do this, we actually need use multiple loops. All right, so let's just copy this code and see what happens, what we get. I'm just going to delete this and print it, and then you'll see there's an indent error again. So I'm just going to say enter. I'm just going to say space 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, okay, these are comments, so I don't have to worry about those. So this is actually another for loop over here. So this must be in lines, 4 spaces as well. So from there, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I'm going to save and run that, and I get 4 spaces. So I think that, yeah, so I actually shouldn't put this over here. It should be in line with the other one. So it should actually be here. That's why I was going to error. I get my triangle over there. Okay, so you can go through the notes describing what this does. But the important thing is the structure of the code, right? For loop, I, and everything else. One thing I wanted to quickly add is what is this I actually have? What is I actually producing? So let me just quickly show you. Just take this code again. I think I actually undo something there. Yeah, there you go. So if I actually print I, see what is printing. If I just comment that out, what is it printing? It's printing 0 to 10. I can make it 5. It's printing 0 to 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 5 values. So I can make this X. I mean, it'll be the same thing. You can name it whatever you want. It'll always print that out. All right, and then all I'm doing is in the index, I'm putting that X, and adding it to index, and then I'm printing it out. All right, so this is the basics of the for loop. All right. So you can go through the notes and try to understand what is happening with printing with stars and trying to manipulate it. All right. Also very important is looping through an existing list. So how do we do that? So let's get age column again. So maybe we can just say like age equals 10, 20, 50. So how do we loop through this? Say for I in, so now remember that with the with the range shows you up to how many times you want to loop, right? So to do that, we need to find the length of age. How many values are there actually in age? Okay. Now to do that, we just going to say range, the length of age, right? Colon, enter, gives us the spaces for us. And now, very important, what do you think if I say print I, what is it going to give us? It's going to give us 0, 1, 2. It's not going to give us the actual values in age, because I is just an iterator. It just shows the amount of times you will loop. If I want to access the actual values, I have to say print age, and then the index. There you go. Now that she shows us the value, 10, 20, 50. All right, so very important to understand that. Okay, so this shows how we explain how we go through a loop, and you can do the same with the other ones as well. So this shows you how you can loop through the group lists as well. Conditional statements, also key aspect of programming in general and Python as well. How do you have conditions, right? If you want to check if something's true or false, how do you check that, right? So you do it with an if statement, if else, and you can go through what that all means. Let's just copy and paste this and see what happens. So again, I think I might get an error here because it should be 4 spaces. Yeah, it should be 4 spaces. Sometimes one space works, but just be consistent. Rather type these out, and you get your 4 spaces like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you have 4 spaces, just stick to 4 spaces. As long as Python just needs to know there's a distinction between this line and that line. That's why you have the spaces. All right, so there you go. So the condition is true. These numbers are the same. What happens if I make this 40? Condition is false. These numbers are not the same. All right. So this is quite important to be able to distinguish between things, like checking if 2 numbers are the same or not, for example. All right. So this explains what each step does. And this is another condition. If you have multiple conditions, let's see how that'll work. Paste. Let me just fix these. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 4. There you go. Okay. Let's see what happens. So numbers condition is true, so that is true. So let's make it 10. This number is smaller than the second, right? So this will be false. Then it goes into this one, checks that one, and then this one that doesn't happen. All right, so very important to understand this. And now, for example, if we want to now check that condition for the age list, so let me actually get that, get the data for age. I think here it is. Copy that, have it, and then let me go to this over here. Run this condition. So we want to check how many people are above the age of 35 in the age list. Just copy this. Might have to fix the indent spaces, I think. Yeah, so this is broken. So let me just, there we go. Maybe this should all be in one line. This should work, but I want 4 spaces, so rather just do it like that. So this should be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then also by this column. 4th one, yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's see what happens. All right, so it tells me. So what this code does is it goes through the list age. And if the age is bigger than 35, it'll print out the index and also show the value of it. All right. So this is a different way of actually printing it out. If you have an F, if you have just an F in front, then you can actually print variables inside the print statement. And if you just use curly brackets, then you can add those values in here as well, as I've shown. So if you want to put a variable inside the print statement, to just use curly brackets with this F in front. Okay, so I think that's all. So this just describes the indent issue. Very important to note. The last one is a while loop. So I won't go into this in too detail, but let me just copy this and show you very similar aspects. So while loop is a little bit different. You just have to define things before, just the index before 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 each. So in this case, we almost like there's a condition in here. And then, so first I just define index as equal to 0. So this is our counting value. We can make this I if you want. It doesn't make a difference. We can call it whatever we want. So we can say I equals 0. While I is less than 11, print the value of I. And then inside, we need to say I equals I plus 1. But then you get 10, right? If we don't have I equals I plus 1, then this will always be true, and then you're going to be stuck in a while loop, and you're going to crash our program, and then just like Neo, we'll be stuck in a loop. All right, so I can go through this and should explain what you're doing. Then a few examples that you can go through as well. And this is the end of this lesson.